No, apparently they
Sì, tieni conto che questa persona dovrebbe entrare, non è però
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Se non faccio spiegare.
Morning, everybody. My name is Michael Fagan, and I'm thrilled to be with you once again and working with the Grandi Marchi as we welcome them to Toronto for another wonderful tasting. One of the things I like best about tasting with this wonderful group of winemakers is that we get to do a little tour all around Italy at once because they represent some of the finest wineries from across Italy. As we get started, I would also like to just take a minute to thank our friends at IEEM, Giancarlo and Melina here today, for all your help in bringing this to Toronto. And we can't continue without thanking the Italian Trade Association, and especially Benedetta. Thank you so much for all your help and the help of your office in making today happen. The Grandi Marchi, as many of us know, is an association that's made up of 18 members of the top wineries across Italy. These are all family-owned wineries, and they have come together with a mission to spread the word, to educate, and to showcase wine, food, culture, and all good things Italian. And they do this under an umbrella association called the Grandi Marchi. Today we're very fortunate to have with us the president of the Grandi Marchi, and I'd like to invite Piero Mastro Bialpino to put on one of his other hats for a minute to help say a few words to start off today's tasting.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for being here. We are very proud to be here in Toronto to talk about these wines, but also about the experience that we have been doing for 20 years now. We are celebrating the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of the Istituto this year. So it's a great pleasure to share with you this experience, this successful experience of wine families that have been doing this for quite a long time, all together, bringing this message all over the world every month with different missions somewhere, traveling all together like this, and it's a beautiful experience of friendship and also of value sharing, the values of families, wine families that have been representing the extraordinary distinctiveness of all these territories, all these grape varietals. Each of these families, for generations, have been the defenders, preservers of these ancient roots.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So one of my challenges today is to try to keep things on track. So with your assistance, what's going to happen in the next hour and 15, 20 minutes is we're going to walk through 14 wines, one wine from each of the wineries presented here today. We've got a selection of sparkling, a selection of whites and reds, and they're all showing very well, if I do say so myself. So we're going to start our day off with starting in Veneto with Prosecco. And I'd like you to give a warm Toronto welcome to Alessandro Marquesan from Carpeni Molgoti, who's shouldering on the other end of the table down there. Thank you very much for coming. And when we think about it's growing in popularity. And one of the things I'd like to start by asking is just what is making it so popular, and what might you be noticing about any changes in the demographics that are keeping this growth going in such a positive way?
Thank you.
But there's always going to be a first one to start with. And it's nice to be in Toronto today on a sunny, crisp day. Last time I was here was when the Raptors won the title, so it's very nice to be back. What makes Prosecco popular, I think, is just the drinkability, the sort of accessible luxury in a way. The fact that it's a wine that can be enjoyed in many moments of our life, from aperitif to a wine to come up with a meal. And just the fact that it's easy to drink, easy to access, easy to understand, but that represents something typical of the lifestyle of the Veneto and the Venetian side of the Veneto.
Perfect. Now, all that growth sounds really good, but sometimes it comes with some challenges. And what are you seeing as some of the main challenges with sustaining that growth?
It does come with challenges, and the biggest challenge, especially for us, the Cabernet Malvolti, which I just joined a few months ago, so it's a new kid on the block. I'm new for Cabernet Malvolti, but I'm from that specific area. I'm from the area of Conegliano and Malvolti. I was born there and I traveled the world. And what makes it difficult for us is to explain the difference in quality, because Prosecco has been known as Prosecco worldwide, and its big success is about that word, Prosecco, everywhere. There hasn't been really much work done on explaining the difference between DOC and DOCG. And that letter, that G, garantita, makes a massive difference, because it's all about where it's grown and where it's planted. So it is being planted pretty much everywhere in Veneto now and in Friuli, but the quality and the challenge of explaining the quality is explaining where it's grown in those specific areas of Conegliano and Valdobbiadene and Asolo, and why it makes a difference, why it's better, why, and we'll taste a good example today, why it makes it special and why it makes it unique. And it's all always go back to the terroir, the soil, and the unique microclimates.
Well, you mentioned we're going to try one of those wines today, so what do we have on deck?
We are trying our Rive San Pietro di Barbosa 2022. This is the Rive. There are 43 Rive in Conegliano Valdobbiadene, and they represent the pinnacle of the quality when it comes to production. They're all from steep hills where there are densely planted vineyards and where you have a more limestone, calcareous soil plateau, which gives a different type of minerality to the wine and makes it quite individual and enhance the character of the aromatics on the nose and on the palate. It just makes it a wine that's a bit more complex, got a bit more depth of flavors, and it's got a more rounded texture. One thing about this wine, it's where Cabernet Malvolti, Antonio Carpeneo was the person that invented sparkling wine in Italy. I guess Mr. Danello might confirm that. But he was the person that was responsible for the start of making sparkling wine in Italy. And we come from 5 generations that gives a lot of knowledge and tradition, but we always look into innovation. One thing about this wine is that during the fermentation, we keep a bit of whole bunch within the fermentation just to get a bit of texture out, a bit of weight, and it just makes the wine a bit more pleasurable and intense on the palate. This is the most unfortunate time, because it was not just during COVID really, end of 2019, so 2020 is when it was meant to hit the market, and that was the first place that was going to be popular was going to be in restaurants, and restaurant closed. So we are all reset to get restarted. It's gaining popularity everywhere. It was a nice introduction for the DOC, allowing 10 to 15% of Pinot Noir in the blend with Glera. I think it makes wines that are complex and more interesting, and also gives a different take on what Prosecco can be when it comes to the pairability with food.
Thank you very much.
Just want to say one thing, because it's very nice to be here, and I feel very honored because Mr. Zanella, he doesn't remember this, but about 20 years ago, he came to visit me in a restaurant representing Franciacorta. And it was a very important, big, busy restaurant in London. I had to brief from the owner that I wasn't allowed to buy anything than champagne, but after meeting him and feeling inspired, I convinced the owner to buy also Franciacorta, so we did these wines. And he was responsible for the success of sparkling wines worldwide, to which we're all very thankful.
Very grateful indeed. Nice. That's a nice segue.
Thank you.
That's a nice segue, because Franciacorta is our next stop on the.
And I believe it's a great opportunity to make a walk around Italy. It's not from every day to have the opportunity to have such different character, variety, and wine in one country, and you will, I hope, appreciate what we are doing. Speaking about Franciacorta, it's a very tiny area. It's not only 3,000 hectares of vineyard with more or less 120 producers of grapes and bottles. So we are in a condition where all the people working in this area, they get more or less the same direction that are done by a very strong rules. Disciplinary that is one of the strongest in the world, related to the production of grape for hectare, the pressing of the juice, and the aging time, the minimum aging time that is the longest. That is minimum for the multi-vintage wines aged now. Bosco inside Franciacorta is an estate, and we are close to 270 hectares. That we are all in organic. That is not easy at this latitude, especially this year where we have rain from March until June, close every day. So it was a big challenge run organic all the vineyard in 11 different villages of Franciacorta. Bosco now is around production of Franciacorta about 80%, 75%, and 25% still wine. In the Franciacorta today, you will try the most important, that is dedicated to the name of the founder, who was my mother. And so this wine is called Anna Maria Clementi, and you are drinking in 2015. So it's a bottle that stayed close to 9 years on the yeast to mature before the degaussage. This one is a dosage zero, so no maquillage. You can go out without putting lipstick on the market. Just exactly like a show, and without any addition of sugar or any other elements in the wine.
Is a leading producer in the Marche, and they're also producing wines in neighboring Abruzzo. Joining us today is Michele Bernetti, who is the president and CEO. Welcome, Michele.
Grazie, Michael. Thank you.
Marche is a region nestled along the eastern coastline of Italy. It's a hidden gem that doesn't often get the recognition it deserves. Beautiful rolling hills, picturesque landscapes, rich cultural heritage. Marche offers unique microclimates, and it's ideal for viticulture. Michele, how does the terroir and climate of Marche uniquely influence the characteristics of the wines you're producing compared to other regions?
Buongiorno again. Thank you, Michael. Yes, Marche is, as you saw, as you can see from the map, is basically at the same latitude than Tuscany, but with an important difference. Between Marche and Umbria and Tuscany, we have a mountain chain called the Appennino, the Apennines, which makes a difference, quite important difference with the climate. In fact, my region is more influenced by the winds coming from the east, coming from the Balkans, from Eastern Europe, and of course by the Adriatic, the proximity to the Adriatic Sea. And this makes the climate slightly cooler, which is slightly cooler on the eastern part of Italy rather than on the western. And this is a situation that brings very good conditions for growing wine varietals. And of course, Vernice has been there since so many times, because it really found a perfect combination of technical sculpture between day and night, We are halfway from the Adriatic to the Apennine, to the mountains, so this situation, the cultivation, the growing of white grapes has been fantastic, and that's why we selected also the wines.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned last a long time, and we often forget that a lot of the white wines from Italy do have a lot of Asian potential. How does this wine change over time? What can we expect?
I think, of course, you lose a bit of the primary flavors on the nose. You get the wine gets. Verdicchio is not a very aromatic varietal. It's not like some other varieties from the north. I think it's really beautiful on the palate. So this acidity remains there. The wine becomes a bit more complex. It gains in different layers of flavors or complexity, keeping this dry character, but a little bit more gentle, a little bit more rounder.
Just one final quick question. Personally, I think white wines often don't get enough love. We don't drink enough white wine. We're always run into reds, and we very often go back. We start with white wine when we're starting to appreciate wine. We never go back. And I'm wondering, what any words of advice or words that we can share to encourage consumers to revisit and to make white wine a regular part of their diet?
The invitation it's not easy, but anyway, I think is honestly I have to say that in some part of the world, like even in Italy now, there is much more much more acceptance of even investing in terms of buying important white wines as much as red wines, and I think is probably you can anticipate the trend, and I'm sure that will spread around in other parts of the world.
Thank you. Through our journey, we are moving from Marche to Friuli, and while both regions produce exceptional white wines, Marche's are celebrated for their straightforwardness and elegance, where Friuli's wines are perhaps more known for being aromatic, complexity, and richness. And a good example of that are wines from Yelman. Today we're joined by Paul Koster. Paul spent a lot of his career in F&B and joined Helpin Agency in 2008, and he's currently looking after their Italian wine portfolio. So Paul, I want to thank you for taking time to represent Yelman with us today.
Thank you. And just so everybody knows, Felix Yerman sends his regrets. He's in New York and he couldn't make it, so you're stuck with me.
Well, I'll go to New York tomorrow and see what the real excuse was. Can you talk about the winemaking styles and techniques that are used at Yelman?
Sure. So, just so everybody knows, Sylvia Yerman is the winemaker at Yerman. He started the wines there in the 1970s. Vintage Tonino was actually his first wine he produced in 73, but 75 was the first vintage that came out. Silvio has a very interesting outlook on how to make wine. He's very regimented in his style. He believes that the grapes should show the way that they grow. In other words, the style of the grape, he wants the grape to express himself based on the soil that it sits in, and the style will show itself. He doesn't really add anything to the process. He believes fully in a 100% sustainable farming experience for his farm. He does cover crop, he does not use chemicals, so he wants the purest form of grape when it comes to make his wines. In the instance here of Vintage Tonina, it's listed that there's 4 grapes, there's actually 5. And he was the first producer, at least for sure in the Friuli region, if not probably in Italy, where instead of just doing a straight varietal, he decided, no, I'd like to do a blend, like a pure blend. So even though the style has changed a little bit, originally he used Pinot Bianco and Sauvignon to make Vintage Tonina. However, now it is a little bit different in that it's, as I was mentioning, 5 grapes. So it's Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Rivola Gialla, Malvasia, and then just a touch of Pinot. So when I say it's a field blend and it's straight up field blend, the majority of those grapes, the first four I mentioned, are basically anywhere between 22 and 24%, and the remaining still drink beautifully for many, many, many years. Part of the reason why the wine does so well and the grapes grow so well is the hill that it's on. It's right next to the actual winery. The hill leads up from the backside of the winery, and if you go down the other side of the winery, you're no longer in Italy.
Well, the new way of thinking means, translated, it's a lot tougher to make wines these days because the climate doesn't help us at all. But like we say, you know, when the going gets tough, so this definitely helps to prune out those producers that don't really know what they're doing. So it is really, really challenging today to have good, healthy, and uniform grapes with this weather. It's funny because I was making jokes 30 years ago, actually even 40 years ago, unfortunately time flies, when I went to Napa and I saw all these fans and irrigation and stoves, and I was wondering what those were for, and they told me it was for the spring frost. And I started to laugh because I said, oh, in Tuscany we don't have anything such as spring frost, but now in the past 15 years, almost every year we get it. So this is an example of climate change. Basically, it makes things a lot tougher, especially when we get very, very high heat to preserve the aromas and the acidity. It really is a challenge, but if you know what you're doing in the vineyard, you can do it. So that's what we're doing.
Well, you said we only have 3 minutes, right? It's very tough to explain about the Super Toscans in 3 minutes, but I will try to make it as fast as we can. In the 60s and 70s, in central Tuscany, mainly in the Chianti Classico area, with few exceptions, we thought that we could make much better wines that we were doing with the Fiasco, the Chianti and the Fiasco wine that most people were buying because they wanted to keep the bottle as a souvenir and maybe make a lamp or put a candle in it. So we could do much better. And we asked the consortium if we were able to do that by avoiding to use the white varieties in the blend. That was, yes, believe it or not, we had to use 20% white varieties in the Chianti Classico blend for a red wine. And maybe to concentrate only with Sangiovese, which we felt it was the best variety there, out of the indigenous ones, and maybe blend in some international, and the answer was no. So the tradition, we cannot go against the tradition, even if our tradition was mostly for beverage wines and not for high-end fine wines, but that was tradition. So we could not call it Chianti Classico in this case. Cabreo is in Chianti, so it's right in the middle of the Chianti Classico area. So we didn't have a geographical appellation at the time, so we had to call it table wine. Now, in table wine is the broadest and cheapest category in which you're not supposed to state a region, a vintage, or anything, just product of Italy. So in this category is where you have most of the entry-level jug wines. And this was kind of a shame because putting these high-end red wines, very interesting wines, in such a cheap category, it didn't really pay off. And so some journalists at the time gave these wines a super Tuscan. The nickname was given because he felt it was sad to see these wines in such a cheap category. Then in 1993, we finally got the geographical appellation, IGT, which means Indicazione Geografica Tipica. And that helped a bit, but still, that's why they're called Super Toscans. And now Cabreo, our Super Toscan, is one of the first out. 1982 was the first vintage, and this is a blend of Sangiovese, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot in equal parts. What I wanted to say really, really quickly is I'm proud to be in this group, and I think this makes a great impact on the out there, because when you have 18 wineries that join forces together and they are all have in common the fact that they are family-owned business. In my case, my family has been in the wine business for 8 generations. And now, since 2000, me and my father concentrated, I'm Giovanni, my father is Ambrogio, only on estate-grown wines from the most interesting regions of Tuscany. Now, this is from Chianti Classico, but we also have a Chianti Classico back there in the tasting, and a Brunello di Montalcino. We have a wine from Bolgheri. We have vineyards in all these places because we want to try and get the best out of Tuscany. But the same thing are doing the other members of the group. We make distinctive wines that have a strong identity that is related to the history, to the territory, and also it's quite unique because remember, in Italy we're not like France. People like to play by themselves. So it's very difficult to find a group of people that team up like we did, and obviously the effect on the consumer's world is much better. So I'm really happy to be part of this group.
Federica Boffa Pio, the only child of the late Pio Boffa, beloved icon of Italian wine. Federica lost Pio in 2021 to COVID and was handed the keys to the cellar and has taken over. Welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
As a young, I gotta throw this out. As a young,
Typical question.
I gotta ask. As a young leader in the wine industry, what's been your biggest challenge in taking over the helm of the winery, and how have you navigated it?
Thank you for being here and to have the patience of listening to many family stories. You know that Italians always we love to speak and to talk. So indeed, I have a big challenge, which is to carry on the history of the family, which started our activity back in 1881. So it's a big challenge because we have a long tradition. But sometimes we don't. I think that we don't have to think about tradition like a sort of a cage or sort of something that is blocking you, but simply a starting point or a place where you have to start. You have to consider this very important heritage, which is a very precious starting point. But at the same time, you always have to add your own character, add your own personality, which is something that I've been trying to do since 4 years now, which is at the same time a big challenge, but also something very exciting because wine is my passion. So it is a work, a job, but also a great passion.
People say followed by minimal intervention in the winery. And is that the philosophy, or what is the philosophy of Piaget?
So today we are tasting our flagship wine, which is a wine which carries the name of our family. The name of this wine is Barolo Pio. Pio is the surname of our family. And carries the name of our family because it's the most important wine for us. First of all, it's a wine that we've been making since 1881. And second, it is a wine that really represents our philosophy and our idea of wine. This is an appellation wine in the sense that we are making our Barolo blending Nebbiolo grapes sourced from more than 8 vineyards located in 5 villages in the Barolo area.
Of releasing the visual or the viticultural potential of Puglia.
Well, Rivera is 75 years young. The winery was founded by my grandfather in 1950, and his idea at the time, Puglia was only producing bulk wine. So there was basically no quality bottled wine. So his idea was to finally exploit and give a name and a place to the wines from Puglia, and more specifically the wines from what later became the Castelmonte appellation, Castelmonte DOC and DOCG, which is located in the central aspect.
So can you start by telling us about the unique characteristics, and it's not a fair question because Sicily is quite large in a lot of different areas, but tell us about some of the characteristics unique for Sicily.
For sure. I must say that Sicily is quite unique as for the heritage that is bringing along, and has been obviously conquered by almost every possible culture that have enriched the history of this island in terms of every aspect, from language, from food to many other different aspects, obviously, and wine has been part of that story as well. So Sicily is, we define Sicily as a small wine-growing continent for its different characteristics of microclimates, soil type, for the opportunity of working with more than, let's say, 75 native varieties, which obviously we are trying to promote and we are trying to communicate out there, not all 75, but Tasca works with 25 of them. And the point is to tell a different story, obviously a Sicilian miracle in terms of winemaking. Unfortunately, like in the history of Sicily, Sicily sometimes has been really linked with bulk wines production. I think along other producer and I would say lots of like producer today, we are trying to communicate what Sicily is unique for and able to develop fine wines and able to really discuss about the power of the land. Just to give you some frameworks, obviously, of understanding how different can be this island, together with the 75 native varieties, we are working with an harvest that might length more than 90 days, which is obviously makes this island quite unique. And obviously one of, the vineyard surface might be found in mountains, on hillside and plains, which obviously we can find different characteristics also discussing about the same variety, and we can see the difference expression coming from different side of the island. But it's definitely an island that must be seen, must be experienced. Unfortunately, sometimes when we go around the world, we see just a small portion of what Sicily could offer, and it's definitely an area that we need to develop a bit more as a category, let's say, and discover more wines and more philosophy behind each family. And I think as one of the historical family involved in wine production since 1830, but let's say the history of wine, let's say the last 100 years has been taking a different path. What I love about this family is that since day one, the philosophy has always been trying to not take any shortcut and trying to promote the DNA of the island, so native varieties, but also terroir-driven wines. I think in 1970, when Conte Giuseppe Tasca d'Almerita has decided to really create this wine, was taking a completely different step compared to what Sicily was known by at that time, but trying to communicate the uniqueness of one of its property that had under the name of Tenuta Regaleali, which is located in a really unique location in the center of the island.
Chiaro Master Therapy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes, the family has been in the business for about 3 centuries now, 10 generations. The 11th is already is arriving now, and so it's a long story of winemaking. The family has always owned and run the family winery and vineyards. We currently own 260 hectares in Irpinia. That is a small wine region located in the inland of Campania. Campania, of course, is very famous for the coast, for Amalfi Positano, Capri, and Ischia, Sorrento, and of course Mount Vesuvio, the city of Napoli, Pompeii. I mean, it's really an outstanding region for tourism. But the highest quality viticulture comes from the inland. That is very unusual compared to the coast because we are in the middle of the mountains. The same mountain chain that was mentioned before by Michele, through the Appennini, coming all the way down to southern Italy. And the Appennini in our area are particularly high peaks and particularly cold. We are the last wine region to harvest. We are now harvesting the whites. We have just finished the Fiano grapes. We are now harvesting the Greco, and Aglianico is still there on the plants. So we usually end the harvest of Aglianico grape in the first days of November. So it's a very unusual situation considering the latitude, because of the altitude, because of the grape varietals that are all only ancient grapes going back to the roots of the Greeks and the Romans. Some of them are Greek, like Aglianico and Greco. Some are Latin, like the Fiano grape. And also, so the period of ripening is very late as a standard. And also these high peaks all around strongly protect this high plain that is called Irpinia, where we have 3 DOCG appellations. Fiano di Avellino DOCG based on Fiano Greco di Tufo based on Greco, and Taurasi that is made from Aglianico, a grape. This is the monarch, is considered the monarch of our viticulture. We are going to taste our Stilema Taurasi Riserva DOCG from 2016 harvest. And this is another characteristic of this wine and grape, the ageability. We have about 1 century of bottles of harvests of our family in our cavo, in our winery, and all of them are still evolving. I mean, even the oldest ones are still improving. I mean, they are never ready to drink. That's why the current vintage of this wine is exactly this. 2016 is the current vintage of this wine. So the next release, the 17, will be before Christmas. We will have in the tasting tonight a little of the preview of the next vintage that is going to be released in a while. But I mean, this is just to give you an idea of the freshness, the huge acidity that we have in all the grapes and wines in the region. And another characteristics, of course, is the soil, because we are in a volcanic area, and so we have a soil that is very, very rich in minerals. And so we try to enhance this ability, we could say this salinity in our wines in order to get as more as possible the expression of the territory in a glass. That is the very distinctiveness of these wines. As you said, these grapes, are only in this region. So for us, it's a challenge to make people understand and memorize the tasting profile of a Fiano Greco or a Taurasi. But it's important to locate these grapes in their microenvironment in order to get this link and distinctiveness, because of course you can export and replant Aglianico or Fiano anywhere, but it's difficult to reproduce the same environment. So it's important to focus a little bit on the matching between the altitude and the grapes.
Gianni Gonzaga, welcome, sir. San Leonardo Estate has been their family home for 3 centuries. What's the historical significance of San Leonardo Winery in Trentino, and how has the 300-year history shaped your reputation today?
But first of all, I would like to apologize for my very chic outfit, but my luggage got lost. And I got food poisoning. It was a fantastic flight.
Welcome to Toronto.
No, not about Toronto. British Airways, that's it. Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be among you today. My first time, I must say, up here in Toronto. And we come from Trentino. It's an area of mountains, all the north of Italy. It's the region that goes from Verona up to Austria, to give you an idea. So 75% of the soil is covered in mountains and rocks and lush woods. And my family has been running this estate for 300 years now. Actually, slightly less, but the estate transformed into a property producing mostly wine and grapes in 1724, and then my family started renting it in 1741, and they finally bought it from the church, which was the original owner in 1781. It has been a monastery for 150 years. It was a place of hospitality where travelers would stop by to rest the horses, eat, sleep, and definitely drink also, we hope, a good glass of wine, because for us it's a hedonistic pleasure wine today, but at the time we always have to think that it was a part of diet, it was calories, and that's why in Italy it's so diffused and we have so many beautiful varieties.
So I work for Michele Fiago Winery. We're located just between us in Alba, inside Piedmont.
Literally means the hill overlooking the Ostia River, and it marks the southwest border of Brunello di Montalcino. Please join us in welcoming Santiago Maroni Cinzano, brand manager of Colpos.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being such a gracious host today, and thank you everyone for joining us and listening to the stories we have to tell you. My family's been in Montalcino for 3 generations, for exactly 50 years this year. We've been involved in the wine and spirits industry for almost 500 years. So there's a long history there. However, Montalcino is our home today. For me personally, it's a place where I spent most of my life, so I feel very much Tuscan and from the area where we produce Brunello. Poggio al Vento is the very first vineyard that our family planted when we arrived in Montalcino. It was planted in 1974, so it's today a 50-year-old vineyard. Still the original plantation. It is undergoing a certain level of gradual renewal. However, the majority of the single vines in Poggio al Vento are still the original vines planted in 1974. Poggio al Vento is also, before being a vineyard, before being a wine, it is a place in the heart of the Col estate. Col is over 500 hectares, so one of the biggest wineries in Montalcino, covers a wide area of the southern slope of Montalcino. My grandfather chose the sandiest soil of all the 550 hectares to plant Poggio al Vento, which at the time was a rather curious choice, as in the 70s, the market preferred bigger, bolder, muscular wines, where Poggio al Vento, coming from a sandy soil, low density of plantation, low yield, thinner backbone, very elegant, very refined in style. I very much like the analogy that Anselmo used, the marathon runner as opposed to the muscular bodybuilder, and that really ties into the philosophy of Poggio al Vento as well. We want to extract the elegance and the most refined part of the Sangiovese. It is aged for 48 months, so 4 full years, in large oak casks. We call them botti, and we only use botti, which is neutral oak. We want the effect of the oak on the Sangiovese to be as subtle and delicate as possible, and it is released at least 8 years after the harvest. So 2016 is our current vintage, our latest release. Because in Montalcino, we are shifting towards thinking about how we can have on the market wines that are aged. As Federico was saying, the philosophy was selling the whole production, and today we are still in an industry where 95% of the wine sold is uncorked within 1 year of being sold. So I think we need to be mindful of that. My father's always told me, if we produce a style of wine like Poggio al Vento, which is very much a wine with aging potential made for longevity, we have the responsibility to hold back in the winery and to offer aged wine. This also obviously comes down to the style of the producer. In Brunello, there is a wide variety of ready-to-drink Brunellos that are usually less adapt for aging potential. So in that case, there may be less of a question. But for us, it's very important to age wines and to release them when they are at the right moment. That is why 2016 is just the release.
Thank you very much. The family who owns Masi. Welcome.
Correct. Thank you.
Can you speak to the style of Amarone? Is it changing? And why?
Yeah, Amarone is a wine that has a long history in terms of production, not that long in terms of distribution. I mean, it's a technique used for the Amarone, the appassimento, the drying of the grapes, that has been known since the Roman time. But as I said, the phenomenon of Amarone into the market is around the 80s or around there. So my family is producing Amarone since 1772, 7th generation, me included, and the 8th is already running the business in the company. But as I said, it was during the 80s where really Amarone became an important wine in the market. And was, by the way, in the same time when a major change in the production were happening into the Amarone. So the use of selected yeast for to make the fermentation. Why? Having this grape dry, very rich in sugar, that need to be fermented during the winter, because we have now the grapes sleeping on the bamboo rack up until January or February. So this fermentation is quite difficult because of a lot of sugar to be converted in alcohol. At certain level of alcohol, the yeast start to not working properly, and moreover it's cold. So become very slow fermentation, sometimes stops. This means all oxidation. That's why the one who knows Amarone since the 70s and so on, remember a very difficult wine to drink, to pair. And you need to, as you say, to open on Thursday to enjoy it on Sunday. And so, but in the 80s, change technology happens to come. So selected yeast that can really perform this, let's say, difficult fermentation within shorter time, no oxidation. And then Amarone become much more approachable wine that you can even enjoy even much more younger, but still is this big wine, but finally gentle.
Now at Massi you use both GO training systems and the more traditional Pergola system. Can you tell us why you use both and what each contributes to the production?
Yeah, that has been a choice. I mean, traditionally it was Pergola that has been in the 90s quite widely abandoned in the area because Pergolas can produce.
And helping the team refresh this room, we're going to take this moment to thank the Grandi Marchi members for your time, for your candid discussion, and for being available to us. We look forward to seeing you here again. Italy has a storied history of wine producing, from Sicily in the south to the Alpine regions in the north. Italy has amazing geography diversity that is celebrated by talented winemakers, offering customers many unique flavors and styles of wine. Thank you for sharing and celebrating that diversity with us today.